Here in the United States, we're looking at this disaster as a consequence of Reaganomics. How do we deal with that? In Europe, they're dealing with a disaster which is the consequence of a terribly misguided policy of integrating the Eurozone economically. It's like great for the banksters, bad for everybody else, but not integrating them politically. And so, you've got states that are making out very well, and you've got states that are just being brutalized. And then in Asia, you've got China principally, but also South Korea and Japan to a lesser extent. You've got housing bubbles. You've got, situations that are the consequence of so-called global free trade that are building these countries, but have their own cycles and their own dangers built into them. I think that step number one of the most important things that we need to do is educate people about economics. People, just simple stuff. I've been talking about this for the decade we've been doing this show, forever. Right? But it's like, and I've been writing books about it for a lot longer than that. We need to educate people about basic economics. When Reagan came along and said, "Oh, supply-side economics, that's a cool idea," he had no idea what he was talking about. There's no such thing as supply-side economics. The whole Reaganomics idea of, if we make it easier on the rich and we let the rich get massively richer, somehow that's going to trickle down to all the rest of us. It's just created a nation of peons. It doesn't, it does not work. It has devastated the American middle class. And here's the bad news. The American middle class is wiped out, and the American middle class is what drives the economy. Now, I realize there's a lot of billionaires who say, "Well, I got mine." But there's a lot of people on the high end of middle and the low end of rich who are really going to get screwed by this. And they don't realize it. They think they got theirs. People making $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, or who've got, a couple $100,000 stashed away, and they think, this is Fat City. No. That's a very dangerous place to be. And then there's a very large proportion of the American population that are just getting by, that are living right on the edge, that have run up their credit cards, that have run up their mortgages, that have, if they lose their health insurance, they get one serious illness, they lose their job, they're homeless. So what do we do about this? Well, for the Europeans, I would say dissolve the European Union, dissolve the euro tomorrow. Just let countries go back to having their own currencies. It was an experiment. You tried it for a couple of decades, didn't work out so well. Nearly, I'm telling you, if mark my words, 5 years from now, we'll have this conversation again, God willing. And if the European Union is not substantially dissolved, or countries are not allowed to have their own currencies, within 5 years, you're going to see war in Europe. And I don't say that lightly. With regard to the countries of Asia who are piling up these massive trade surpluses, we need to, what's in their best interest and the best interest of the rest of the world, is for all the countries of the world to start renouncing these free trade agreements and saying, Ross Perot was right. He was a crazy old coot, but he was right. And nations should have economic semi-permeable membranes that are called trade policies. And the trade policy that each nation creates should be one unique to that nation that works to the best interest of that nation. Period. And then with regard to the United States, how do we fix it here? We have to educate people to the fact that we have tried a radical experiment for 32 years. You won't even hear this in the news. Every economist knows this. This is not a secret. The right-wing economists brag about it. The left-wing economists are freaked out about it. But they all know it. For 32 years, we have been doing an experiment. And by the way, the British economists know it as well because the Brits have been doing this along with us. Margaret Thatcher started it 2 years before Ronald Reagan did. And this Thatchernomics, Reaganomics, austeritynomics, smaller government. Well, the Warren Harding in 1920 when he ran for president of the United States, his slogan was less government in business, more business in government. Right? That's the essence of Reaganomics. And it has failed. And it's time to say that, to just acknowledge that, to say these economic policies that only benefit the rich and the multinational corporations, and the multinational corporations part has been principally our trade policies, but the economic policies, principally our taxation policies, have not worked. And we need to go back to the taxation policies that we had in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and 70s that did work. And we need to have a strong social safety net. Instead of talking about chain CPI and cutting back on Social Security, we need to be talking about lifting the cap on who pays into Social Security, so wealthy people pay into Social Security too, and raising the benefits that people get out of Social Security. Instead of talking about raising the retirement age from 65, we need to be talking about dropping the retirement age down to 60 so that more people will get out of the job market. About half of the people between 60 and 65 would probably retire. In fact, I'd say I'd take it down to 55, frankly, but let's say 60. Half those people retire, half of them stay working. It's an optional thing. The half who retire, they're going to open up all these jobs for young people. Suddenly there's going to be competition among employers for young people working for them. That'll drive up wages. Drive up wages, tax collections go up, the economy gets better.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Not only does the economy get better, but tax revenues are increasing and your deficits go down. Everything gets fixed.